The Tears of God. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This book continues the story of the Arab sugar daddy and the beautiful Indian girl, and the story of the Indian child bride and the old Arab husband, and the story of the Indian Miss World and the rage of Muslims of the world, and also the story of Christina and the complete Jew. They have been written in English and translated into Arabic by the author Dr. Ahmed. This tale resonates with genuine love, strong resilience, and steadfast courage. I invite you to accompany me as I narrate the adventures of the extremely beautiful Indian girl, Aphrodite Khan, and her handsome American lover, Michael Lewinsky, in the Muslim world. Before we dive in the tapestry of the story, I would like to remind the reader this novel is narrated in 6 books. Book 1, The Arab Sugar Daddy and the Beautiful Indian Girl. Book 2, The Indian Child Bride and the Old Arab Husband. Book 3, The Indian Miss World and the Rage of Muslims of the World. Book 4, Christina and the Complete Jew. Book 5, The Tears of God, Jews, Blacks, and Muslim Women. And Book 6, The Hidden Life of the Prophet Muhammad. This is an intriguing epic story which exhibits resilience, love, and sacrifice. Book 5. Researching the social life of the Muslim woman in the Islamic world. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief passages from a review for printing in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. All characters in this novel are fictional, and any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is merely coincidental. Chapter 57. The Persecutions of the Chosen People. Nevertheless, if we use suffering and abuse as criteria for deciding who are the true Hebrew Israelites, then by the same token, the first people who naturally fit that bill will be the Jews of Israel. No race in the entire world had been hated, faced abuse, tortured, and killed to the same degree as the Jews. The German Nazi Holocaust was just a small drop in an ocean of 2,000 years of their long continuous suffering. As we speak, the Jews are surrounded by over 400 million Arab haters, Muslims as well as Christians, who want them to be all annihilated. In addition to this inner circle of Arab haters, there is an outer circle of over 1 billion haters, Muslims, and their sympathizers. Iranian scientists are working day and night to produce a nuclear bomb to wipe Israel from the map of the world. Around 1.2 billion Muslims hate the Jews and wish to see all of them exterminated. Every Muslim prays 5 times a day and calls in his prayers the Jews, the accursed people on whom the wrath of God abides forever. See Surah Al-Fatiha 1, verse 7. The so-called black Hebrew Israelites and those who support their conspiracy theory are referring to the Jews as the serpent people and Satan worshippers. They count them as fake and impostors who have nothing to do with the children of Israel of the Bible. To examine this claim, let us briefly state the long history of the Jews and what happened to them after the destruction of their temple in 70 AD. Under the Roman commander Titus Vespasian, the Roman army attacked Jerusalem in 70 AD. They destroyed the temple, massacred the entire population, ransacked the city of Jerusalem, and made it desolate. The historian Flavius Josephus reported that after the destruction of the Jewish temple, the Roman soldiers under Titus Vespasian killed 1,300,000 Jews. They destroyed 128 Jewish synagogues in Jerusalem, and 180 synagogues in Judea and Samaria. Rome took 97,000 Jews as prisoners, of whom many ended up in the slave markets in Europe. The leader of the Sanhedrin, Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai, fled with many Jews towards the Mediterranean Sea, and settled at Yamuna city not far from Jerusalem city, where he created a new form of Judaism, in which he abolished the animal sacrifices and dedicated their time to the study of the Torah of Moses. The menorah became in the place of the temple. In Gamala city at the Golan Heights, today the border between Israel and Syria, some Jews settled there and established the first Jewish synagogue. Many other Jewish survivors fled to the vicinity of the Dead Sea and hid in the well-known fortress of Masada created by King Herod. The Romans sent an army that laid siege to the fortress for 3 whole years. Then the Roman soldiers used the Jewish prisoners to build a flyover bridge or long and huge ladder. According to the historian Flavius Josephus, there were over 1,000 Jews who preferred to kill themselves rather than to surrender and become slaves to the Romans. First, every man killed his wife, sons, daughters, and other relatives. Then every man killed another man until the last man took his life. Ever since Masada became the symbol of Jewish perseverance. Today the Israeli soldiers swear allegiance that Masada must never be allowed to fall again. In 132 AD, a Jew by the name of Simeon Bar Kochba, which means the son of a star, led a 3-year revolt against the Roman Empire. 500,000 Jews were killed by the Romans, thousands were sold into slavery, and many went into captivity. Judaism was no longer recognized as a legal religion in the Roman Empire. In 135, the Roman Emperor Aelia Hadrian put down the last resistance of the Jews to the Roman Empire. He then destroyed the entire city of Jerusalem and rebuilt a new city, which he renamed after himself, Aelia Capitolina. A pagan temple for the Roman god Jupiter was erected on the Temple Mountain. Another temple for Venus was built on Golgotha, just outside the city. The Roman Emperor Hadrian knew that the bitter enemies of the Jews were the Philistines, the former inhabitants of the southern region of the Kingdom of Judah. Therefore, he changed the name of the entire country to Syria Palestina, which retains its name until today. Many people think that Palestine is the original name of the country, which was given to it by the so-called Arab Palestinians. Those Arabs did not become inhabitants of that country until the 7th century, when the Arab Muslims invaded it in 636. The Patriarch of Jerusalem, a Palestinian Christian, handed the keys of the city to the second caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab. The Muslims occupied Palestine until the European Crusaders kicked them out of it in the year 1099, but after 200 years they returned under the Kurdish Muslim leader Saladin. After he ended the Jewish revolt, Emperor Hadrian forbade their presence in that region. He issued a decree that any Jew to be found in Aelia Capitolina, or any place in the entire region of Palestina, should be put to death. As a consequence of that, began the mass migrations of the Jews out of their homeland, the Promised Land, and as the Bible prophesied, scattering them all over the world. They went everywhere in the known world where there were communities of people. The Roman historian Ustobra said, "There is no city on earth where these people are not found." Some of them stayed in northern Palestine, Galilee, closer to their homeland. By the 2nd century, 2 million Jews became refugees in Babylonia, Iraq today. The rest of the Jews were scattered throughout the Roman Empire. In 200 AD, the Roman Emperor Severus forbade religious conversions to Judaism. In the 3rd century, the Roman Emperor, Constantine the Great, who converted to Christianity in 312 AD and made it the state religion, had outlawed Judaism, cut the ears of the Jews, and dispersed them as vagabonds. During the 5th and 6th centuries, the Jews were forbidden to hold public office. In 528, the Byzantine Emperor Justinian passed the Justinian Code. It prohibited Jews from building synagogues, reading the Bible in Hebrew, assembling in public, celebrating the Jewish Passover before the Christian Easter or the Resurrection of Christ feast, and testifying against Christians in court. In 613 AD, very severe persecutions against the Jews began in Spain. Jews were given 2 options: converting to Christianity or leaving Spain. Many Jewish children over the age of 6 were taken from their parents and given to Christian families to educate and raise them as Christians. In 722 AD, Leo III outlawed Judaism and many Jews were baptized against their will. In 855 AD, Jews were exiled out of Italy. A great many church fathers and bishops openly condemned the Jews and called for the destruction of their synagogues. St. Augustine, the greatest theologian of all time, and one counted among the three great scholars of the Church, with St. Ambrose and St. Jerome, wrote in 415 AD, "The true image of the Hebrew man is Judas Iscariot who sold the Lord for silver." The Jew can never understand the Scriptures and forever will bear the guilt for the death of Jesus. St. Jerome, who created the Latin Vulgate translation of the Bible, in 418 AD, wrote of the synagogue, "If you call it a brothel, a den of vice, the devil's refuge, Satan's fortress, a place to deprave the soul, an abyss of disaster or whatever you will, you are still saying less than it deserves." John Chrysostom had said, "The synagogue is worse than a brothel. It is the den of scoundrels and the repair of wild beasts, the temple of demons devoted to idolatrous cults, the refuge of brigands and debauches, and the cavern of devils. It is a criminal assembly of Jews, a place of meeting for the assassins of Christ, a house worse than a drinking shop, a den of thieves, a house of ill fame, a dwelling of iniquity, the refuge of devils, a gulf, and an abyss of perdition." I would say the same things about their souls. As for me, I hate the synagogue, I hate the Jews for the same reason. Perhaps no one showed so much hatred towards the Jews than the founder of the Reformation, Martin Luther. In his infamous little book, On the Jews and Their Lies, 1543 AD, Martin Luther gave the following advice to all kings and rulers of Europe. "What then shall we Christians do with this damned, rejected race of Jews? Since they live among us and we know about their lying blasphemy and cursing, we cannot tolerate them if we do not wish to share in their lies, curses, and blasphemy. In this way, we cannot quench the inextinguishable fire of divine rage nor convert the Jews. We must prayerfully and reverentially practice a merciful severity. Perhaps we may save a few from the fire and flames of hell. We must not seek vengeance. They are surely being punished 1,000 times more than we might wish them. Let me give you my honest advice.
Firstly, their synagogue should be set on fire, and whatever does not burn up should be covered or spread over with dirt, so that no one may ever be able to see a cinder or stone of it. And this ought to be done for the honor of God and of Christianity, so that God may see that we are Christians, and that we have not wittingly tolerated or approved of such public lying, cursing, and blaspheming of his Son and his Christians. Secondly, their homes should likewise be broken down and destroyed, for they perpetrate the same things there that they do in their synagogues. For this reason, they ought to be put under one roof or in a stable, like gypsies, so that they may realize that they are not masters in our land, as they boast, but miserable captives, as they complain of incessantly before God with bitter wailing. Thirdly, they should be deprived of their prayer books and Talmud, in which such idolatry, lies, cursing, and blasphemy are taught. Fourth, their rabbis must be forbidden under threat of death to teach anymore. Fifth, passport and traveling privileges should be forbidden to the Jews. They have no business in the rural districts, since they are not nobles, officials, merchants, or the like. Let them stay at home. If you princes and nobles do not close the road legally to such exploiters, then some troop ought to ride against them, for they will learn from this pamphlet what the Jews are and how to handle them, and that they ought not to be protected. You ought not. You cannot protect them unless, in the eyes of God, you want to share all their abomination. To sum up, dear princes and nobles who have Jews in your domains, if this advice of mine does not suit you, then find a better one, so that you and we may all be free of this insufferable devilish burden, the Jews. Let the government deal with them in this respect, as I have suggested. But whether the government acts or not, let everyone at least be guided by his conscience and form for himself a definition or image of a Jew. When you lay eyes on or think of a Jew, you must say to yourself, "Alas, that mouth which I there behold has cursed and execrated and maligned every Saturday my dear Lord Jesus Christ, who has redeemed me with his precious blood." In addition, it prayed and pleaded before God that I, my wife and children, and all Christians might be stabbed to death and perish miserably. And he would gladly do this if he were able to appropriate our goods. Such a desperate, Thoroughly evil, poisonous, and devilish lot are these Jews, who for these 1400 years have been, and still are our plague, our pestilence, and our misfortune. I have read and heard many stories about the Jews that agree with this judgment of Christ, namely, how they have poisoned wells, made assassinations, and kidnapped children, as related before. I have heard that one Jew sent another Jew, and this by means of a Christian, a pot of blood, together with a barrel of wine, in which when drunk empty, a dead Jew was found. There are many other similar stories. For their kidnapping of children, they have often been burned at the stake or banished, as we already heard. I am well aware that they deny all of this. However, it all coincides with the judgment of Christ, which declares that they are venomous, bitter, vindictive, tricky serpents, assassins, and children of the devil, who sting and work harm stealthily wherever they cannot do it openly. For this reason, I would like to see them where there are no Christians. The Turks and other heathens do not tolerate what we Christians endure from these venomous serpents and young devils. Next to the devil, a Christian has no more bitter and galling foe than a Jew. There is no other to whom we accord as many benefactions and from whom we suffer as much as we do from these base children of the devil, this brood of vipers. Quoting from his book, On the Jews and Their Lies, Luther's Works, Volume 47, translated by Martin H. Bertram, Philadelphia, Fortress Press, 1971.
Such unprecedented anti-Semitism by the leading Roman Catholic Church fathers and the founder of the Protestant Reformation led to many persecutions and mass genocides of the Jews of Europe throughout the centuries, which reached its ugliest form during the Holocaust, at which Adolf Hitler and his collaborators murdered 6 million innocent Jewish men, women, and children. In the 7th century, the Jews of North Africa, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, and Morocco were killed if they refused to convert to Islam. At one time, some 60,000 were sold as slaves. During the Middle Ages, the Jews were forced to wear the badges of shame, yellow, red, or blue. They were confined to ghettos. Germany considered the Jews to be the slaves of the emperor. They were excluded from entering the rising number of schools and universities. In the 11th century, England banished them from the country. When the First Crusade began in the 11th century, the cry among the Crusaders, "Kill the Jew and save your soul." Large numbers of Jews were challenged as Christ killers, embrace the cross, or die. 12,000 Jews in the Rhine Valley alone were killed in the First Crusade. This behavior toward the Jews continued for 8 additional crusades, until the 9th Crusade in 1272. When they took Jerusalem in 1099, the Crusaders forced all the Jews into a large central synagogue and set it on fire. Those who tried to escape were forced back into the burning building. In 1146, the Second Crusade began. A French monk, Rudolph, called for the destruction of the Jews. In 1180, the French king, Philip Augustus, arbitrarily seized all Jewish property and expelled all Jews out of France. In 1189, Jews were persecuted in England. The crown claimed all Jewish possessions. Most of their houses were burned. In the 12th century, general persecution swept throughout Europe, and hundreds of thousands of Jews were killed. In the 13th century, the Black Plague, also called the bubonic plague or Black Death, swept Europe, and the Jews were accused of poisoning the wells of the Christians. Rumors spread that the Jews were not dying of the plague because the devil was protecting them, and they were paying him back by poisoning the wells of the Christians. As a result, 1/2 of the Jews in Europe were murdered. In the 14th century, they were banished from France. As they fled France, the Portuguese refused them entry. In the 15th century, Spain forced 800,000 Jews into the sea, most of them drowning or falling to exposure. In 1411, the Spanish Inquisition began, and tens of thousands of Jews were killed. A great many of them fled to Russia. Over 5 million Jews were relocated to Russia. By the year 1881, Alexander III, the head of the Russian Church, established a Jew public policy stating that a third of the Jews had to die, a third had to join the church, and the last one-third was to emigrate. Between 1880 and World War I, pogrom began. Pogrom is an organized, sanctioned program of political persecution. It is an open season of persecution upon a particular group of people. Everyone has the right to persecute and kill them. Ukraine alone had 12,000 pogroms against the Jews. By the end of 1940s of the World War II, 6 out of every 10 Jews were killed. Kristallnacht, or the Night of the Broken Glass, was the night throughout Nazi Germany and Austria of 9 to 10 November 1939, in which the shards of broken glass littered the streets, when all Jewish-owned stores, buildings, houses, and synagogues had their windows smashed. 6 million Jews were killed by the German Nazi regime, under the command of Adolf Hitler and his collaborators in the Holocaust. Holocaust in Greek means holy burnt, or a sacrifice by fire to a god in which the whole animal is completely burnt. In Hebrew, the Holocaust came to be known as Shoah, which means calamity or catastrophe. From the year 70 to the year 1947, 40 different nations had invaded and ruled Palestine. After the Jews went into the diaspora, the Christians occupied their land until the Muslims came and conquered them in the 7th century and took it from them. Then in the 11th century, the Crusaders defeated the Muslims and occupied the land for 2 centuries until Muslims recaptured it and expelled them. In 1948, the Promised Land went back to the chosen nation, the Jews. What happened to the Jews during those 2,000 years of wandering among other nations? They were treated as beggars and parasites and despised by everyone. They were enslaved and killed. In every continent, country, and city, their blood was spilled. They became a nation of ghosts. Their destruction was sought by many, with their children taken from them and converted to Christianity. Many times, they were forced by Christians as well as Muslims to choose between converting to their religions or facing death. The church fabricated a false doctrine called replacement theology and claimed to have replaced Israel, with the Christians being the new Israelites. The Jews were considered a rejected and cursed people. They were called Christ killers, and everywhere they went they were tortured and killed. During the evil Nazi Holocaust, the church turned a blind eye. When the Jews finally decided to return to their homeland, the Pope stood strongly against their return to Palestine. He argued that, if at all a Hebrew home is to be created, it should be created in any land except Palestine. The Pope's stand against the Jews was not different from the decision of Sultan Abdul Hamid II of the Ottoman Empire, who agreed for the Jews to settle everywhere in his empire except Palestine. In general, the Jews are the most hated people in the world. Jesus says to his disciples, "If the world hates you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you. If ye were of the world would love his own, but because ye are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you." The Gospel of John chapter 15, verses 18 to 19. The long-lasting world's hatred of the Jews, anti-Semitism, proves the undeniable divine maxim that they are hated because they are the chosen people. Therefore, anti-Semitism is from the devil. A true Christian should always love the Jews and support their right to return to their homeland, the Promised Land. The Jews also are the most gifted people in the world. They are accomplished people in the arts, business, philosophy, education, finance, and fields of science. God gave them the land of Israel as an everlasting inheritance and made them into a great nation. He promised to bless those who bless them, and he shall curse those cursing them. No other nation has been chosen by God except Israel. No other people have become the custodians of God's truth and oracles, the Holy Bible, except the Jews. No other nation has offered a book, the Bible, to mankind that is verifiable through science, through reason, through history, through morality, and prophecy except the nation of the Jews. No other nation offered humanity a Bible, prophets, and Messiah who died for the sin of the world except the nation of Israel. The Bible said salvation is of the Jews, John chapter 4, verse 22. Many nations are jealous of the nation of Israel, and many more want to destroy it. To hate the Jews is equal to hate God. It is spiritual suicide to hate Israel. The Bible said all those who hate Zion, Israel, are going to face defeat, disgrace, destruction, and being removed from the blessing of God. Psalm 129, verse 5. A true Christian is a Gentile saved and converted to Orthodox Judaism. A Jew converted to true Christianity is a complete Jew. A true Christian is the one who says to the Jew as Ruth said to Naomi, "Your people will be my people, and your God my God." The book of Ruth chapter 1, verse 16. A convert to Christianity is a convert to Orthodox Judaism. Anti-Semitism within the church is a theology of abomination. Also, replacement theology is the theology of abomination. Christianity is Jewish. The Jews had been kicked out of their land 3 times, returning time and again. They are the only people in the entire world who have remained without a country for 20 centuries. And suddenly, God gathered them from all over the world and brought them back to their promised land. God promised them a land of everlasting inheritance. Many mighty nations occupying that land have been uprooted by God and sent out of it. No nation has the right to claim that land except the Jews. The Arab Palestinians claim ownership, but neither their Quran nor the Sunnah of their prophet has ever mentioned Palestine as belonging to the Arabs or to the Muslims. The Quran states very clearly that God has given the land to the children of Israel. See Surah Al-Ankabut 29, verse 47. God did not give the Arab Muslims the land of Israel, but it was being taken at the tip of a sword. It has been the same way with the Philistines, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Persians, the Byzantines, the Muslims, the Crusaders, the Egyptian Mamluks, the Fatimids, the Ottoman Turks, and the British. In 1967, the Jews were surrounded by 1 million Arab soldiers from Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and Jordan. They were outnumbered by 12 to 1. The Arabs were supported by 30 nations. They had been trained and assisted by the top military officials of Russia, and joined by 30 South Korean pilots. On the second day, they were joined by the Pakistani Air Force and aircraft from Libya, Algeria, Morocco, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. Israel was left alone to face the combined might of Jew hostility. The entire world kept watching, expecting to see the destruction of the tiny state of Israel, and the annihilation of the Jews. In 6 days, Israel defeated the combined Arab and Muslim armies and destroyed their planes before they took off. The Six-Day War, 1967. How could such a small group of hated people achieve such a victory if God did not stand with them? Psalm 129 answers that question. No matter how nations who hate Israel cannot prevail. The United Nations issued over 370 resolutions condemning Israel for defending itself against the never-ending rocket attacks of the Palestinians, but were ominously silent against Palestinian aggression. Iran vowed to wipe Israel from the world map, and the UN did not condemn such a threat. God indeed scattered his chosen nation, the Jews, all over the world because of their sins. In the 1st century, the Jews committed a huge sin by rejecting their Messiah and King, the Lord Jesus Christ, and delivered him to the Romans to crucify and kill him. For that reason, God rejected them and hardened their hearts. Nevertheless, the Bible tells us, their rejection is temporary and not final, and their hardness is partial. See Romans chapter 11, verse 25. Meanwhile, God allowed other nations to persecute his chosen nation, the Jews. But it pains God to see his chosen nation being persecuted. He also punished those nations who transgressed against his chosen people. The European Christians had been severely punished by God for persecuting and killing his chosen people. Through the Black Plague, 1/4 of Europe perished. During the 30-year war of religion between the Catholics and Protestants, 1/5 of Europe perished. Germany's population was reduced from 30 million to 13 million. In World War I, 25 million Europeans were killed, and in World War II another 55 million people died. Joseph Stalin killed 20 million Russians. Europe was plagued by all kinds of atheistic ideas, and today most of the Europeans do not believe in God. As soon as the Roman Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity and began to persecute the Jews, the Church joined Rome in persecuting the chosen people too. Shortly after that, the Roman Empire was destroyed by the barbarian tribes in 476. Europe descended into the Dark Ages, which plagued it for over 1,000 years. The Church replaced the Roman Empire, and through Charlemagne created its own Holy Roman Empire. The Pope of Rome became the ruler of the world. The devil corrupted the Roman Catholic Church and rendered it beyond reformation. The light of the Reformation shone for a while until its main founder, Martin Luther, began to call for the persecution and destruction of the Jews. By the way, the Reformers did not succeed in reforming the Roman Catholic Church. They just split and formed their different churches, which became known as the Protestant churches. Truly, if you want to understand the history and interpret it properly, look at the children of Israel. In the beginning, the Reformers interpreted the Bible's prophecies literally, but when they came to prophecies about the future of Israel, they went back to the error of the Roman Catholic Church and started to interpret them allegorically. They too took Israel to mean the Church and the Christians, the new Israelites. Once again, the abominable replacement theology has crept back into the Reformation churches. Therefore, the Roman Catholic Church once again gained the upper hand. In the 30 Years' War that followed, the watchdogs of the Pope, the Jesuits, and his knights wreaked havoc all over the continent. Some of the true Christians, the Puritans and Pilgrims, had to emigrate to the New World to escape the turmoil of the religious persecution and its attendant wars in Europe. After the signing of the Peace Treaty of Westphalia in 1648, the Council created the concept of religious tolerance, where everyone can worship whatever god he likes, even the devil. This lenient policy toward the sharp distinction between the true religion from the false religion, the right doctrine from the wrong doctrine, and the real God from the false God has led to secularism. Today, under religious freedom, secular education outlaws the teachings of Christianity in public schools, the Lord's Prayer is banned in schools and all courts of law, and Satan worshippers worship the devil openly and freely in their satanic churches. The Baphomet statue of Satan, a goat-headed figure with horns, wings, and a long beard, was unveiled in Detroit, Michigan under the cheering of hundreds of Satan worshippers of the New York-based Temple of Satan, who decided to erect it next to a Ten Commandments monument in Arkansas. Quoting Christian News Network, July 27, 2015. Many popular American singers on the stage tore the pages of the Bible into pieces and openly worshiped Satan along with hundreds of thousands of their youth fans. Today, Europe has become a haven for every kind of man-made religion. Millions upon millions of the followers of Eastern religions flock to Europe. Islamic terrorist groups are recruiting youth from every city of Europe. After Westphalia, the devil himself masqueraded as an angel of light as Europe plunged into a new kind of spiritual darkness, falsely called the Age of Enlightenment. What kind of enlightenment led to the bloody French Revolution, which crowned a prostitute as the goddess of reason? Which kind of revolution installed Napoleon Bonaparte as the new emperor of Europe? What kind of enlightenment led Europe to forsake God and descend into the spiritual darkness of Gnosticism and atheism that plagued the old continent until today? Between 1902 to 1903, in Russia, a forged document appeared, which was called the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. It included a Jewish conspiracy supposedly drafted by the Elders of Zion, teaching Jews everywhere how to take over the world, take control of the media and the financial institutions, change the traditional social order, etc. It was the first known conspiracy theory in the world. The first Russian investigation concluded that the protocols first appeared in Paris in anti-Semitic circles around 1897 to 1898. The same document was later reproduced by the secret police of France and used against the French Jews. It had been translated into all major languages in Europe and used in many European cities as an anti-Semitic means to persecute Jews and expel them from many countries. A translation made by an Arab Christian appeared in Cairo in 1927, this time as a book. The first translation by an Arab Muslim was also published in Cairo, but only in 1951. Perhaps the most classical example of the anti-Semitism was the legend of the Wandering Jew, also called the Eternal Jew. This legend was produced in thousands of works of literature in all countries of Europe, from Russia to Spain. It had been believed by millions as a true story. The Wandering Jew or the Eternal Jew was a medieval legend about a Jew who refused to give Jesus water, or did not allow him to lean on his wall, while Christ was carrying his cross, on his way to the Golgotha. As punishment for his sin, this Jew was condemned by God to eternal restless wandering and suffering until the second return of Christ. Everyone wishes to have a long life, but a happy long life. But this Jew was condemned to a long life of continuous suffering and continuous restless wandering. This legend appeared in European literature and folklore tales in many different versions. Many names and identifications were attributed to this wandering eternal Jew. He was known as Ahasuerus or Budadius. He was identified as a shoemaker in Jerusalem at the time of Jesus. He was also identified as a shadow, the Antichrist, or a beggar, like Cain or the sacred executioner. Many religious leaders and ordinary people claimed to have sighted Ahasuerus from afar, or had a real encounter with him. He walks in lonely places such as jungles, valleys, mountains, deserts, highways, haunted places, and the like. He appears to people as a ghost, a shadow, an old man, and warns them about the sin of unbelief. An American bishop visited Europe and claimed to have seen the Eternal Jew, and that legend traveled with him to the States. European folk belief associates Ahasuerus' appearance in a certain locality with wars, plagues, and ultimately with the Last Judgment and the Second Coming of Christ. There are no morals behind this legend except that it is a creation of a fictional figure about anti-Semitism against the Jews. It depicted the Jews as cursed, condemned, and wandering people on earth. This false belief persisted until the present time. The culmination of anti-Semitism reached its height in Nazi Germany under the greatest tyrant of human history, Adolf Hitler. He said in his book, Mein Kampf, the personification of the devil as the symbol of all evil assumes the living shape of the Jew. And so, he the Jew advances on his fatal road until another force comes forth to oppose him, and in a mighty struggle hurls the heaven stormer back to Lucifer. Germany is today the next great war aim of Bolshevism. It requires all the force of a young missionary idea to raise our people up again, to free them from the snares of this international serpent, Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf. Hence today I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. By defending myself against the Jew, I am fighting for the work of the Lord, Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf. Hitler drafted his book when he was in prison. When he came to power, he attempted to destroy an entire human race, the Jews. He was influenced by anti-Semitism, which was already 2,000-year-old. It was like a snowball that kept rolling for centuries until it reached its zenith in the Nazi Germany Holocaust, which led to the mass murder or genocide of 6 million Jews, of whom 1.5 million Jewish children and 2 million Jewish women. A network of over 40,000 facilities in Germany and its occupied territories was used to concentrate, hold, and kill the Jews. Hitler thought that he was acting according to the will of God. Today, the new Nazi Germany is Iran, and the new Hitler and his Nazis are the Iranian leaders who vowed to wipe Israel from the world's map. This also is included in the second article of the Palestinian Hamas Constitution. They want to drive all the Jews into the Mediterranean Sea. The argument for establishing Israel has been made since Theodor Herzl witnessed the humiliation of Alfred Dreyfus in France. Theodor Herzl said Jews living in their own country are at least masters of their fate. no more relying on the fleeting kindness of Christian princes, or the caprice of Ottoman viziers, or, for that matter, on the continued embrace of a French prime minister, or the uncertain mercies of the National Front. Israel's success, or failure, is largely in Jewish hands. The Arabs got 500 times the share of the Promised Land, and still, they complain that Israel got too much. In fact, in 1946, about 80% of Palestine, the Promised Land, was granted independence and renamed Jordan. Jordan was part of Palestine, today Israel, but the British created a new country and named it Transjordan. The people of that land went to their beds as Palestinians and woke up Jordanians. And the day the Palestinian Arabs seek peaceful coexistence is the day they will have a second Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza. This is called the two-state solution. Israel complains about it because Arabs have been trying to do it for so long and keep claiming that this is their goal. The Arabs want nothing except total annihilation of the Jews and complete possession of their promised land, from the river to the sea, river Euphrates to the Red Sea. Thousands but millions of public anti-Semitic statements made by Arab political and religious leaders reveal the main goal of every Arab man. But since 1898, the regathering of the chosen people of God began. The Jews returned from Russia, from all European countries, from Iraq, Yemen, North Africa, and many other Arab countries. In 1948, the United Nations voted in favor of the Jewish state. Their punishment for rejecting their king and crucifying him is over. The Lord Jesus says, "And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled." The Gospel of Luke chapter 21, verse 24. The times of the Gentiles here mean the period their promised land would be occupied by foreigners. 40 nations of the Gentiles occupied the promised land. Since 1948, the times of the Gentiles have been fulfilled, and the chosen people got their land back. No power on earth can uproot them again. The regathering of God's chosen people began in 1898, and on August 15, 1948, the United Nations declared Israel as a sovereign state. On the following day, Arab armies of 4 countries, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, and Syria, invaded the Israeli border and attempted to destroy the one-day-old country. Israel struck first and defeated them all. Yet, many other Arab attacks followed until the Arab hostility reached its peak in the Six-Day War of 1967, when Israel humiliated the Arabs' pride and rendered them decisive and final defeat. In conclusion, the claim of the so-called Black Hebrew Israelites is baseless and cannot be proved by any means whatsoever. The dangerous part of their claim lies in the new teachings that are being perpetrated by street preaching in the States, and the thousands of videos they are posting on the internet. Their heretical beliefs show that they are neither a Christian cult nor a Jewish sect, but something totally new. They have rejected the deity of Jesus, the Holy Trinity, the virgin birth of Christ, the canon of the Bible, the 66 books, the Church of Jesus, the universality of the gospel of Christ, the ability of the Gentiles to believe in the gospel of Christ and to be part of the church, and rejecting the Jews to be the chosen nation. They even deny their African roots by their claim of being descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Their attitudes toward Africans show that they despise them and look at them as inferior. But in fact, they are the ones who suffer from a serious inferiority complex. They call the Church of Christ the mother of all harlots and hate Christians, considering us pagans. They also call the Jews the serpent people, the synagogue of Satan, and Satan worshippers. Therefore, they have invented a new religion of hate, which is eviler than that of Muhammad, Islam. Today, the center of all world's activities is the nation of Israel. The Jewish nation was attempted destruction by Nazi Germany, Haman of Persia, see the Book of Esther, and Pharaoh of Egypt, see the Book of Exodus. They were dispersed by the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and the Romans in 70 and 134, but still, they survived and returned. 3 times, they had been out of their promised land, and 3 times they returned to it. One day a Jew was told, "You are the chosen people," and he said, "I wish he chose somebody else." This is because no other people were so persecuted as the Jews. Until 2000, there are 663 Nobel Prize winners, 140 of them are Jews. The global Jewish population is approximately 14 million, or about 0.02% of the world's population. As of 2013, 193 Nobel Prize winners are Jews. The global Islamic population is approximately 1.2 billion, or roughly 20% of the world's population. As of 2013, 14 Nobel Prize recipients are Muslims. Times magazine put the 20 top people in the world, 60% of them are Jews. 30% of the Supreme Court in America are Jews. 13% of law colleges professors in America are Jews. Of college age, Jews 80% are in college. 60% of all top Hollywood positions are held by Jews. 40% of New York's lawyers are Jews. 10% of U.S. colleges professors are Jews. 23% of the wealthiest people in America are Jews. 20% of the wealthiest people in Canada are Jews. Mark Twain once said, "All things are mortal except the Jew." Frederick the Great of Russia asked his court chaplain to prove the inerrancy of the Bible. He said, "One word, sir, Israel." By watching the Jews, you can see what God is doing. 64 of the Bible's 66 books were written by Jews except for 2 which were written by a single Gentile, Luke, the Gospel of Luke, and the Book of Acts. We Christians hold in our hands a Jewish book. This is the nation that gave us the 10 Commandments, the finished law of God. The incarnation of God into humanity came to us through a Jew. Western civilization was shaped and developed through the Bible. No nation in the entire world has come remotely close to the Jewish nation. The beginning of this nation is Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3. It is the foundation on which everything else is built. God called a barren man and a barren woman. Out of the dead womb of Sarah, he created this miracle nation. All Jews trace their origin to one single man, Abraham. For that reason, Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3 is called the Abrahamic covenant. God gave by an oath to Abraham this nation. God swears that this covenant will be done. In verse 1, he promised to give him a land, the land of Canaan, the present-day land of Israel. In verse 2, he promised him a son, Isaac, and that his son will find a great nation, the nation of Israel. In verse 3, he commanded him to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. Through his seed, Jesus Christ, the entire world is going to be blessed. From this nation came the knowledge of God's law, redemption, Bible, and reality of life. This nation is blessed with an everlasting blessing, given a land forever, and became a vehicle for a universal blessing for the entire world. The Apostle Paul said, "For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable." The Epistle of Paul to the Romans chapter 11, verse 29. Therefore, Israel has never, and will never be a cursed nation. To call the Jews a cursed people is blasphemy. To hate that nation is to hate God, and to love that nation is to love God.